Welcome everyone to another Fuzz Thoughts. I am going to talk about two 2025 movies today that I watched recently. The first of which is Code 3, which is a movie set in and around an ambulance and a team of paramedics. Rainn Wilson's kind of the main star, which would suggest that it's a comedy, and it is, for the most part. But I hesitate to just call it a comedy because I think the biggest thing coming away from this one is that early on in the movie, some of the jokes or the humor wasn't quite landing for me. I was like, this is going to be kind of just a mediocre, lame comedy. And I was getting that vibe for the first, I don't know, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. But I stuck with it, and I kept watching, and it's a weird, uneven movie in that, yeah, there's definitely sections that feel that way, but as it goes on, there's actually some very surprising scenes. Like, there's just maybe like 4 or 5 times throughout the movie, out of nowhere, there'll be a very, very good, compelling scene that's hitting on a very serious point or topic. And if the goal of this movie is to show all the different types of things that paramedics have to go through, how unforgiving the job is, and kind of try and like shine a light on that and celebrate a little bit, as well as dipping into some other social issues based on some of the people that they encounter or have to help, then it does a pretty good job of that. And some of those scenes are good, and not even necessarily in a funny way. When I said this is kind of a comedy, it is a comedy, but some of the scenes that are good because they're not funny. They're good because they're actually tense or serious, or they're bordering unemotional or whatever. And that's when I say I was surprised as I was watching this, because there's scenes throughout that are just kind of elevating it. I mean, at least a couple that are just notably very, very, very good. And then there's some other stuff that's fine, and I think the general comedy does get a little better as it goes, because you just kind of settle into the tone and the style and how these characters play off of each other, and you get used to them a little bit. So you like the characters, I think, a bit more by the end than you do at the start. And the overall idea and kind of sentiment that it has, because it's also the last day of the main character's career. Rainn Wilson's character hates doing this, and he's going to quit. It's his last day, and it's their last shift, and he is, he's super cynical. They've got like a younger trainee with them, so there's usually 2, but there's a third in this case, who's young and hopeful and optimistic and says she wants to help people, and Rainn Wilson is like, no, this will suck the life out of you, it's miserable, I know what brains smell like. Like he's just, it's full of that. But it takes some turns, there's a character arc, there's stuff going on. But some of the things they encounter, are healthcare issues, and some of them are just other social issues. I don't want to spoil them specifically, you can discover that for yourself if you decide to watch it. But they are surprisingly dramatic at a couple of points in the movie. And I think it did a pretty, surprisingly impressive job of kind of winning me over, despite my initial impressions at the start of the movie. It's the sort of thing where it almost does feel like a typical movie made for a streaming service up front, and then it kind of shows some surprising depth as it goes. So ultimately, I think it's a good movie. It's an uneven movie. It's not one that I would quite slap the word great onto, but if I'm rating it, I'm going to slap it with at least a solid 7, because I think that it kind of got impressive here or there. And the performance from Rainn Wilson, solid. His co-paramedic, his partner, I guess, he's good as well, and plays off him fairly well. And the younger character is, she's also, they're all solid. Like, the 3 leads are all doing a pretty good job. I do think there's kind of like a dickhead doctor character, who I've seen in other things. I do not know his name. I'm looking at the list of names here, and none of them are sticking out to me. So it may be Rob Riggle, but he's the sort of character you've seen do comedy parts in other movies and TV shows. I think that doctor character, there's a kind of a surprisingly good scene with him a bit later on. For the most part, he's there to just be this dickhead doctor that feels kind of like overly aggressively shitty towards the paramedics, which came off feeling a little bit weird. Like, just how aggressively, like, oh, you guys are losers, stop bringing me patients. Like, the attitude was just very strange. What's interesting is that because I'm currently watching and reviewing The Pit, It is kind of interesting how this has a couple of, same kind of sentiments and ideas that it wants to get across, although it's from the perspective of the paramedics. And maybe that's partly why I thought the dickhead doctor was so weirdly aggressive and like anti-helping more patients. And I'm not saying that those types of doctors don't exist. They very well may do, but it just like he felt a bit more cartoonish compared to the three leads who, at least by the time you get about halfway through the movie, start to feel like real people because they're getting more and more fleshed out. Like a big part early on in the movie is that Rainn Wilson's desperate to eat because they don't get like an official lunch break, and things keep coming up to get in the way, and that's kind of a source of frustration. But yeah, so obviously because it's mostly set around this one shift, it's very focused, and it's kind of like a series of different things they encounter, some of which lean a bit funny, some of them lean kind of sad, some of them lean a bit more tense. They kind of dart around. And it does mean that when they get to something that's a little bit more, traditionally kind of helpful, I guess, later on, you get a nice reaction from it. So I think, pleasantly surprised, right? Not perfect, and certainly I still found, some of the comedy not that great necessarily, but like surprisingly good character and depth at times than I was expecting. So that is Code 3, which is directed by Christopher Leon. So, if that sounds interesting, it's only 100 minutes, so it's not like a big dedication to sit down and watch it. I wouldn't say, don't watch it. Again, some surprising stuff in there. The other 2025 movie I want to bring up today is a movie called If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, which stars Rose Byrne in the main role. It's directed by Mary Bronstein. And it's funny that one of the first reviews, before I watched it, I saw one of the reviews like on Letterboxd, and it simply said, Uncut Gems for Mothers. And it is an Uncut Gems like. And by that, I mean, it's focusing on a main character who's very stressed and is spinning these plates and is kind of slowly, like, everything's going to fall apart. And they're just trying to keep the plates spinning, and they're losing it over the course of the movie. And there's kind of a gimmick to this one. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because I actually quite like this gimmick. But the gimmick of the movie is that this is a mother who's looking after her child who has got some kind of chronic illness, some kind of serious illness that requires constant doctor visits and machines that help her breathe and things like that. That's going on, and she's on her own right now. She's not a single mother. There is a husband and a father in the picture, but he's away on business. He's away doing stuff, and she's on her own looking after the kid. We never see the kid. We hear the kid, we hear the voice of the kid constantly kind of like asking for things and complaining about things and whatever, but we never see the kid. And the opening scene kind of sets this up as there's like a intense close-up in Rose Byrne's face as she's in like a therapy session, and they're talking about the kid and the next steps and things to do and whatnot. And there's kind of a vibe to it where like halfway through the scene, I might have even said out loud, oh, I don't think we're going to see this kid. This seems like it's going to be the style of the movie, is that we're never going to see the kid. We're always just going to focus on her and what she's doing, because it's this thing that she doesn't want to look at the kid. She's too stressed by the kid, and it's like eating her alive almost. Like she's getting more and more stressed and all these feelings bubbling up and constantly being judged for not being the perfect mother and so on. So there's a lot of strong themes here. There's a lot of strong character stuff, particularly how thankless a role this is in some ways, and how the second anything goes wrong, people will start critiquing the mother. And it's not just her character. We sort of get like kind of, we'll hear about other things in the movie, and like immediately there's kind of this, oh, imagine the mother letting that happen. Like, the mother's always blamed for things, and you can sort of feel that weight, that pressure kind of coming down the main character as the movie goes on. And she is, she is kind of losing it. She's she's being a little bit risky or arguably a little neglectful. She's losing her temper. She's doing these different things, and she's juggling a job as well. In the middle of all this, she has a job, and I won't even say what the job is. It's a little funny what the job is, and it kind of was a surprise when it came up. And it's not too late into the movie you find it out, But given that what everything that's happened up until that point, when it turned out she did what she did, I actually kind of burst out laughing a little bit, and kind of like sort of nervous, like, oh, holy shit, this really? Conan O'Brien's in the movie, which was a surprise as well. So hey, there's that. There's also one or two other faces that I won't spoil who pop up, but it's good. It's good. It's a solid. It almost feels disingenuous to just call it a drama. It's so tense and uncomfortable with how in your head, how in her head you are, and feeling the pressure that it basically almost feels like a thriller. Even though technically I don't know if it falls into the category of thriller because of just what it's actually focusing on. There's not necessarily the same kind of threat or mystery that a thriller would have, but it feels like a thriller with how intense it is the entire time, and how stressed she's feeling about everything. I mean, I almost have to dock it points though, because she definitely had legs. That's a dumb joke. I'm sorry. But I think that it's a good performance by Byrne. It feels like I didn't check, but I assume she's been nominated for some awards for this performance because it is her movie. There's almost no scenes that don't have her as the focus of the scene. In fact, by the time we do get a scene, I think there is one or two, like very late on, that she isn't in, and it actually feels really weird and uncomfortable. Like, how? Why? This doesn't make sense. She's the central thing. It's who we're focusing on the entire time. So it's one of those very intense dramas. Now, what I would say, because I'm being quite positive here, and I am positive. I think it's a good movie. I think it just is shy of great for me, at least on a first time watch. And I think the reason is that I think the ending, while I get the ending, I understand it, and I think it works as an ending. I don't know if it was quite the home run that I was hoping it was building up to, where it felt like it really did something. And and the fact that I can even say it's an Uncut Gems like means that in some ways it's reminded me of Uncut Gems, and Uncut Gems is already a thing, and it felt maybe a bit more special the way that movie kind of handled the drama of the character, just like having all the problems pile on and pile on and pile on. So maybe there's a little bit of that where it's like, okay, it's kind of like that, but it's a little bit lesser. Now it's focusing on some very different characters and very different themes, and it's talking about very different subjects. And I think the way it puts you in her head of her struggling to try and live up to being a mother, and the pressures of being a mother, and how she doesn't really feel like she's up to being that, I think is very strong. And I think where it maybe falls down for me a little bit is that towards the end, it starts to do a little bit more like sort of stylistic things where it's like, I won't quite call it dream sequences, but they're just like she perceives things in a very specific way. And it feels like we're kind of leaving reality and just seeing how she sees something. And I think once it started doing a little bit of that, it lost me a little bit, right? I think it was already so stylized with not seeing the kid ever, right? I think the intense shooting style of feeling like really in her face, and like that was already such a strong cinematic language that once they started doing some of this other stuff, I felt it felt a bit more gimmicky, I guess, to me, and it didn't feel necessary. It felt like it was, a little bit of a hat in a hat, and I think it would have been better not doing that and sticking a bit more with reality. So I mean, for me, that was kind of the biggest thing, and that was mostly in the last like third of the movie, where I really appreciated that I didn't know where it was going. There was definitely moments in like the first half where I'm like, I actually have no idea how this is going to play out and end, and there's certain things I didn't expect to happen that did, and vice versa, and that's cool, that's great. But it also kind of went down, like I say, this fantastical doesn't sound right, because that makes me sound like I'm saying it goes supernatural. It doesn't do that, but it just starts to present things that are less grounded, I suppose, and I wasn't as into that turn, I don't think. But the actual final moments of the ending, I think, are fine. I don't mind that it leaves something a little bit open. And I won't say anything else, but I'm kind of okay with that element of it. But I just Yeah, it took maybe a, and I wonder. I genuinely, I'm not sure. This might improve for me on a rewatch if I ever do rewatch it, if I ever want to rewatch it, because it's very stressful. So it's maybe not one that I would want to rewatch. But I do think it's worth seeing, and I do think it is one of the movies in 2025 that is worth checking out, especially if you like Rose Byrne, because this is kind of her movie. It's her starring. Vehicle doesn't sound right because vehicle implies it's more of a Hollywood kind of like blockbuster or action movie or something, but it's her movie to act in, right? Everything revolves around her character. It's her show. So if you like her, this is, something that you should probably check out. And if you want to see some of the better performance or one of the best performances of last year, worth checking out for that reason as well. And it's mostly really well directed, other when it maybe goes into some of that stuff that I talked about later, where it just felt a little bit unnatural to me. But the rest of the shooting style I really liked, though. All of the not seeing the kid and just hearing the voice and how the voice starts to grate in your ears after a little bit, and it's very intentional because that's how the mother feels. I think that feels great. I think that's really smart stuff. So that's If I Had Legs, I Would Kick You, and it's just shy of great. And I guess what I mean when I'm saying that is that I'm not quite giving it the 8, which to me is where I'm saying things are great. I'm giving this the 7.5, which is just it's almost there. I can't quite give it to it. Maybe on repeat viewings, maybe after some time to further digest it. Although it's been a couple of weeks since I've watched this now, so I've had a little bit of time to process my feelings on it. So that is If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. So that's another Fuzz Thoughts. Another 2 movies in the book, and I'm sure I'll have another one in a week or 2. So let me know what you thought of these 2 movies in the comments. It really does, help out to get the comments, and I like seeing what people think of the movies. Like, subscribe, all that usual stuff, and of course you can support everything over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV or via YouTube membership, get bonus stuff for all the other movie shows. But that is me, so thank you once again for joining or listening. I always appreciate it. Keep watching movies, and if you can get it, it's always nice to have diplomatic immunity.